Hemmer's articulated intersects is as mesmerizing as it is fascinating. While its dramatic array of lights easily grabs one's attention, it's an equally impressive technological achievement. To appreciate Hemmer's installation, one would have to imagine him or herself as a participant, and perhaps the most obvious feature of the installation is the enormous beams of light pointed directly to the sky. These beams of light are produced by searchlights, those which we would typically see in movie premieres or prison security if you've ever been to prison. The use of electricity as a light source is more than a century old, and its method actually predates Thomas Edison's patented light bulb. Edison didn't invent the light bulb, but improved it by increasing its lifespan, and he did this by using a carbon-based filament. This was an important adjustment to the searchlight. Searchlights are composed of two key components, an arc light and a parabolic reflector. Arc lights were lamps with carbon-based electrodes which produce a tremendous amount of light, and parabolic reflectors would magnify and direct that light. In the early 1900s, searchlights had a very militaristic purpose, which was to identify enemy positions at night and search for wounded soldiers during the First and Second World War. However, the traditional use of the searchlight and its components quickly changed after World War II. The carbon arc was no longer used as a light source, and it was replaced by xenon arc lamps and LEDs, since they don't burn out as fast and are generally much safer. Searchlights also adopted much more commercial use and are now associated with parades or special events. Despite this, Hemmer uses searchlights to create an interactive, intimate experience, something which allows people to amplify their gestures on an urban scale instead of scanning the sky randomly. So once again, place yourself controlling a lever at one of these stations. You move the lever and one of the searchlights mimics the path you outlined. Automatically, two other searchlights shoot into the sky and trace a similar path intersecting your original beam of light. So how does this work? If one lever controls one searchlight, how do the other two searchlights know where to intersect? To do this, Hemmer uses an optical encoder, that is, an electromechanical device that converts the angular motion of a shaft, or in this case a lever, into digital information. Optical encoders were developed in 1951 as a way to improve upon its predecessor, the brush encoder, which was a similar device that relied less on digital computing. By using digital information in lights, optical encoders proved to be much more efficient. They didn't make as much noise, they were faster, and they were more precise. Optical encoders were purposed for their first satellites around 1960, and over time, optical encoders have adopted to new sources of light. In both the history of the searchlight and the optical encoder, both technologies incorporated new light sources. Once again, we see the use of incandescent light bulbs, xenon flash tubes, and LEDs being incorporated in optical encoders. By now, it's quite obvious that Hemmer has a fascination with lights. Pulse front, articulated intersects, pulse cornice, voice tunnel, and open air, and much more. All of these installations use either searchlights, optical encoders, or both. Imagine yourself one last time at the articulated intersects. You move the lever and in turn control three lights. In the distance, you see someone else controlling a set of lights, so you decide to intersect with them. As soon as you do this, your lever and your light stop moving, and for a brief moment, your light begins to pulse, and the lever begins to vibrate. This is the result of haptic feedback, or haptics. It's the use of touch feedback in a user interface to provide information to a user. Haptics has been in use since the 20th century in all sorts of technologies and is still used today. Probably the most relatable use of haptic technology is when your phone vibrates when you receive a text or when you die in a video game. Haptics has been given a huge role in the 21st century with the rise of computing. It's seen in mobile devices, gaming consoles, the creation of exoskeletons to enhance the senses, virtual reality, and so much more. So why does Hemmer use haptics in articulated intersects? Well, this installation was actually meant to be placed along the US-Mexican border. Being a Mexican-born artist, he wanted to do this because he felt the division between the two, and this installation would actually be an effort to unite the US and Mexico. By placing this installation across borders, citizens from both countries would be able to interact with each other, while also dispelling the fear of Mexicans being tracked and hunted by using searchlights as an artistic medium.